Hi, my name is Abby Suckle. I'm an architect, and I'm also president of Culture Now. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lever House, and in order to properly tell that story, we need to introduce the cast. The starring player is Charles Luckman. Luckman was born in Kansas City, Missouri, in the early part of the century, and he decided at a very young age he would be an architect. He did very well in school, and he was offered a scholarship to the University of Missouri, but he didn't go there because they didn't have an architecture degree. Where he went is the University of Illinois, and he graduated magna cum laude in 1931, which was the Depression. He got married to his college girlfriend, and her father wouldn't let them get married, according to Luckman's biography, unless he got a job to support his wife. But this was the Depression, so there was very little being built, and of course no jobs in the field. He was able, with some luck, to find a job in the advertising department of the Colgate-Palmolive Peat Company. And so he went in as a draftsman, and he began to think about and make some suggestions about how displays could be changed to help the marketing. And the salesmen got tired of listening to his corrections, so they decided to take him around to see the stores and see the displays, and he managed to get a couple of his ideas implemented. Suddenly, it increased sales, and his career snowballed. 4 years later, he was promoted to sales manager of the Pepsi Company. Profits quadrupled, and by 1937, Time magazine had anointed him Boy Wonder of American Industry on his cover. He was now all of 27. In 1946, Pepsodent was acquired by Lever Brothers, and Charles Luckman became president. Unilever was a British company headquartered in the U.S. in Cambridge, but he decided that it should move to New York. They actually had a small presence in New York, but he felt that it would be better if the whole company was headquartered there. This involved uprooting the employees who did not really want to move. Secretly, he began buying up land on Park Avenue, which involved 14 sets of lawyers, numerous brokers, and several shell companies. As finalized, the lease was to run for 60 years. The main broker behind the transaction, S. Dudley Nostrand, won the award for the, quote, most ingenious and beneficial Manhattan real estate transaction of 1949 from the Title Insurance and Trust Company. The commission was given to Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, who Luckman knew from his time in Chicago. Probably. The design team consisted of Gordon Bunshaft and Natalie Dubois, which he holed up in the Roosevelt Hotel in order for them to keep quiet about the project. Now, to set the stage a little more, in 1915, their 40-story Equitable building was built at 120 Broadway. It was the world's largest office building. It took up a full city block, casting enormous shadows on the surrounding streets for much of the day. This prompted New Yorkers were horrified, and this prompted the city to enact the first zoning code, which stipulated that buildings could only occupy 25% of the site at grade. The result was a city full of wedding cake-shaped tall buildings, because there were sort of sun angles where you could get smaller as you got higher. For the two architects, three if you count Luckman, who actually was licensed in Illinois, all steeped in the latest thinking, creating a newer and improved version of this wouldn't do. Bunshaft's act of genius was to place the bulk of the building back from the street and only utilize less than a quarter of the site to build all 21 stories of offices as a rectangular tower. Yes, a lot of the available bulk was left on the table, but they were able to create what is considered the first modernist office building in New York. So what should go in the ground? Typically, ground floors were filled with income-producing retail spaces. Since Lever could use the whole site for themselves and they sold soap, they didn't really need to do this. And, they pointed out, the fact that shops don't rent for much on Park Avenue, people buy on Fifth or Madison, and all they do on Park is walk. This left them the opportunity to create a large public plaza and commissioned Isamu Noguchi to design it, but actually that was never installed. The building appears to float because the rectangular columns that you can see on the ground floor are actually set 10 feet back so that they can miss the tracks to Grand Central below. Inside, the building was filled with state-of-the-art amenities, including a computer terminal room, outdoor recreation for employees, a medical suite, and an art collection. To save on air conditioning, there were no operable windows. The glass was tinted blue. It was the first curtain wall office building in New York City. The one previous to that had been the UN on 7th Street and First Avenue. Additionally, the company draped a $50,000 window washing gondola from the roof, a publicity stunt that used Lever brand surf soap to scrub the windows clean every 6 days, so the building would be a, quote, symbol of everlasting cleanliness. It actually took 90 seconds to clean a plane. Sadly, Luckman had a disagreement with management about the direction of the company's American business, which could not be resolved amicably, so he resigned on January 19th, 1950, which the building was still under construction. So what should he do next? Well, the first thing he did is he called William Pereira, his roommate from architecture school, who suggested that he join him in his firm in Los Angeles, which at the time had 8 people. Luckman was then in charge of at least 500. So Luckman and Pereira was formed. In the 9 years they were together, the firm managed to complete a lot of work, including the theme building at LAX and the Disneyland Hotel. Lever House opened to great acclaim on April 29, 1952. In 1982, it became the youngest building ever to be landmarked in New York, primarily due to the fuss created by the machinations by the Fisher brothers, the same Fisher brothers of Park Avenue Plaza, who tried to buy the building to demolish it and construct an even larger building on the site, and of all things, they hired SOM to do that design. Nearly 50 years later, Lever decamped to Greenwich, Connecticut in 1997. I should mention that the ground lease belonged to a woman named Sarah Corrine, who was a little-known force in New York's real estate circle, but she owned some of New York's choicest property, including the Equitable Building. So only the building was actually up for sale. A.B. Rosen, whose parents were Holocaust survivors, was the CEO of RFR Realty, and he swooped in. He and his partner, Michael Fuchs, had a strategy of purchasing vacant office buildings in need of an upgrade and hiring high-quality architects. They bought the building as a multi-tenant office tower, and then they began renovating. This is when the restaurant Casa Lever was added, the Noguchi Plaza was finally constructed, and Ken Smith was the landscape architect on that, and the state-of-the-art glass facade from 1950 was replaced. By 1918, RFR was 3 years behind on its rent payments, and the building was sold again, this time to Brookfield. SOM was hired again for the $100 million renovation, which is what you see now.